class today. We're going to be talking today about climate, the difference between climate and weather. If you would please make sure you have your science notebook, your pencil, and your colored pencils or crayons. You'll need those today. Remember, I'm recording this lesson, so if at any time I go too fast, it's going to be really important that you ask me any questions you need to ask me, and know that this lesson is being recorded so that you can watch it later. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with our class today. I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully we've got everyone admitted. Remember, you're going to only want to write down what Miss Neville tells you to write down. At the top of your new notes, let's write down the words climate/weather. What's the difference? Question mark. Remember, you don't need to write down your learning objective, but it is important that you know Miss Neville's goal for our lesson today. So it's important for us to understand. Give me 1 second, guys. I'm sorry. It's important for us to understand that we will be able to analyze data and describe patterns and changes in the climate of an area. That's our goal, not only for this lesson today, but for the rest of the week. Through our live sessions, through any small group sessions that you and I have, or any learning experiences and activities that we complete, that's what Miss Neville's working on with you. In our notes, please write down our new heading, climate/weather, what's the difference? So before we can describe the differences between climate and weather, we got to make sure we understand what both of those things are. It's important for us to know what is climate. We also want to write down the question, what is weather? It's important for us to understand that climate is the measure of what's happening outside for a long time. Yes, climate's going to measure temperature, rainfall, humidity, air pressure in one area, like Warrenville, South Carolina, for a long time. It's also important for us to understand that weather is the amount, the measure of current weather conditions for a shorter amount of time. Guys, the big difference between climate and weather is time. Climate measures what's going on outside for a long time, years, decades, centuries. Weather tells us what's going on outside for shorter amounts of time. Ms. Neville is about to go on. So we don't need to draw the map. We want to make sure we understand here that Seattle is where we're going to be looking at first. We're going to be looking at what's happening in Seattle. We see that Seattle is in the northwestern. Anything I highlight, you'll want to write down. You do not need to draw the map. Seattle is in the northwestern part of the United States. Its climate is influenced by what kind of air mass is going to be over here from the ocean near the polar region? What would we call, oops, sorry y'all, what would we call that air mass? Turn your mics on and let me know.
Maritime polar.
Very good. This is going to be a maritime polar air mass. We'll want to write these things down as well. So because of that, I need to be thinking about what kind of weather conditions I will experience in Seattle. We want to remember what kind of air comes along with a maritime polar air mass.
Cold and humid.
Cold and humid. And what does that word humid mean?
Moisture in the air.
It means moist or wet air. When I see that word humid, it means moist or wet air. Go ahead and finish these notes up. Miss Neville's about to go on. So let's look at Seattle's rainfall. And first period kind of struggled with this, so I want us to take our time here, second period. Let's look here. You don't have to draw this chart. We're looking at this bar graph, and this tells us the rainfall that happened in a year. Yeah, guys, this is talking to us about climate. When we look at, don't look at the size of the bars, I want you to look at the numbers. When we look here, this is measuring the amount of rainfall that occurred in a year in inches. So 5.6 inches of rain in January. That's almost half of a ruler. That's a lot of rain. That makes sense because they're going to get a lot of precipitation, a lot of humid, wet, moist air from that maritime polar air mass. So when we're looking here, we see 5.6, goodness, we see 6.6 inches of rain, 5.4, even in the summertime, they got some rain there, okay? So we're looking at the numbers here, not the height of the bars. So we see here that throughout the year, Seattle gets a lot of rain. Seattle gets a lot of rain. Let's compare it with a different area. Let's compare it with Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City. We see here that Oklahoma City, that's not near an ocean. This is going to be a continental polar air mass that's going to influence Oklahoma City, okay? So it's going to get a lot of colder, dry air, a lot of colder, dry air. So because of that, do you predict, and you can turn your mic on and let me know, do you predict that the continental, that Oklahoma will get more rain than Seattle or less rain than Seattle?
Less.
Less.
Less. Can someone tell me why you predict that?
Because the air mass is less humid and there's less moisture in the air.
Very good. Yeah. So let's look at the numbers. Don't get flabbergasted by the size of those bars. Let's look here at our numbers. In January, only 1.4 inches of rain. Look at the heights here. You probably can't see that number. That's 4.9 inches. So if we compare the amount of rain in a year between Oklahoma City and Seattle, look at the numbers, not the height of the bars. Let's look. In January, Seattle got 5.6 inches, but Oklahoma City, in that continental polar area, only got 1.4. In November, they got 6.6 inches, but Oklahoma City only got 2 inches of rain. We see here that as we look overall, not every month, but overall, Seattle got more rain than Oklahoma City did. And that's because of Seattle's location. That's because of Oklahoma City's location. What kind of air mass is influencing or changing their climate? So we're going to go on here in our notes, talking about the area, talking about the land. We're going to go on in our notes here, and we're going to start discussing topography. Can you say that word? Don't turn your mic on. But topography. Say that word to yourself. We're going to start talking about the relationship between topography and climate. Topography and climate. Miss Neville is here to tell you that there is a relationship between topography and climate. But before you're able to see that, it's going to be important that you know what topography is. In our notes, let's write down the question. What is topography? Topography is the physical features of land. The physical features of land. Just like Miss Neville has physical features, I have black, curly, some gray hair. I have dark brown eyes. I have brown skin. Some of you have the same physical features as me. That's what we can see. A physical feature is what we see from the outside. You don't need to draw these pictures. I promise you'll be drawing enough of them in a minute. We see here, these are 3 Oops. These are three different types of landforms. Three different types of landforms. And so what we see here, this is a plateau. These are mountains. And this is a valley, flat land between two mountains. We see some physical differences between these three landforms. A plateau is going to rise up high, but it's got a flat top, okay? A mountain is going to rise up high, but it's going to come to a point. A valley is very flat land, very flat land. So when we're looking at the physical features of each of these landforms, how does that affect the type of weather that comes around these areas? Let's see. In your notes, let's write down elevation affects the climate of an area. What does Ms. Neville mean by that word, elevation? Well, last semester you should have learned that elevation, you need to write this down, elevation is the height of a landform. Elevation is the height of a landform. Sorry. Now with my colored pencils, I'm going to draw three different types of landforms. I'm going to draw two mountains pretty close to one another. You should too. I'm then going to draw some flat land between that mountain. This is called a valley. I'm going to have a hill that's forming on either side of these mountains. And let's talk about the differences in elevation here. Before we do that, let's take some time to label each of our landforms. This is a mountain. Mountain. This is a valley. This is a hill and a hill. Now, of these three landforms, which of them, turn your mic on, has the highest elevation?
Mountain. The mountain.
Very good. So in our notes, we want to make sure we write that. Mountains have the highest elevation. Of these three landforms, which one has the lowest elevation?
Valley. The valley.
Very good. Smart group. Valleys have the lowest elevation, and of course, hills would have the second highest, right there in the middle. So if Ms. Neville were to tell you that the type of weather that happens at the top of that mountain versus the type of weather that happens in a valley are very different. The types of weather conditions that both of those landforms will experience is very different because of their elevation. Take some time, please, and finish drawing this picture. Please mute yourself. Okay, so when we're talking about elevation, you don't need to draw these pictures yet. You'll be drawing them after our live session today. Specifically, let's look at this picture here. What we see happening here is that high mountain with that high elevation is blocking water from going over the top of it. Don't you see that in the picture? And that's what you'll be looking at, you'll be drawing today in your notes from Schoology. You're going to be able to see here that this maritime air mass brings lots of precipitation on one side of that mountain, but that high elevation blocks the water from being able to advance to the other side of the mountain. So what we see is one side of that mountain being extremely dry and the other side of that mountain being very, very lush. Lots of water, lots of vegetation, lots of greenery. And that's because while the air continues to blow, that high elevation stops the water. It stops the water, okay? We see here with a valley, things are much different. You'll be drawing these pictures in your notes today through Schoology, not in our live session, okay? And so what we'll see here is that we want to see that during the day, heat's rising from that valley. The valley is giving some of its hot air to those cold mountains on either side of it. At nighttime, cold air sinks, the law of convection. The cold air from the top of those mountains helps to cool that valley down. This is called valley breeze, and you're going to be learning about that today, or writing it in your notes today while we review it in our Wednesday live session. So let's talk about what's going to be expected of you during class today, or after class today. I wanted to make sure that everyone understood, that everyone knew that you do not have a science live session tomorrow because you have your social studies benchmark. So you want to make sure you show up and show out. Show us what you know on social studies, okay? Contact your social studies teacher to see the time that you'll need to be taking that test. Ms. Neville doesn't know what time you're taking your social studies benchmark. Today, you have 3 assignments that are going to be released to you. So when I go into my Schoology folder, I'm going to see that we're moving on into an orange week 3 climate factors folder. Let me say that again. We are moving into the week 3 climate factors folder. So you have some assignments here that you'll need to complete. 3 assignments. And remember, I've released 3 assignments today because you won't have a live session tomorrow. You're going to want to make sure you understand that not only are you completing your air masses checkup, this is a review where you're talking about the type of weather that comes with an air mass, but you're also completing 2 gizmo assignments. If you have not created your gizmo account, I'll need you to email me so I can give you the information and how to create your gizmo account. You then have some notes here that you're going to be completing, and these will be the same assignments. I'm not releasing anything else new for today and tomorrow, okay? All of these assignments and notes you'll need to start working on today, but they won't be due until the end of the day tomorrow. Now, I'll take some questions. Isaiah, go ahead and unmute yourself and tell us what you need.